Welcome to another episode of the 3M3 Madcast, the movie and DVD podcast, which this week is all about The Fighter and True Grit. Please be aware that we will discuss some sequences of the films in detail, so caution is advised if you have not yet seen them. That's Madcast, sponsored by no one, taking Nicolas Cage seriously since The Wicker Man.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Madcast, the movie and DVD podcast. My name's Alec.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave P, the Fighter.
Wow. This week on Madcast, we'll be reviewing The Fighter and True Grit, two movies that are up for Oscars this year, and seeing what we think of them. First things first, how are we this week, gentlemen? You all right?
I'm absolutely fantastic.
The first thing I'd like to say this week is we've been very lucky to have some feedback from some listeners. Thank you very much for that, especially to Gary, who's reviewed all of our episodes so far, and Brendan, who sent me a nice long email. Have you guys had any from anybody in particular you'd like to name check?
I had a very nice cease and desist from Nicolas Cage.
Oh, that's good. That's very nice. And Chris, anybody?
I'd like to point out that I didn't get much feedback, but lots of people wrote in with pictures of Bruce Boxleitner for me, and here they are on display now.
See how long we can drag that out.
Don't interrupt! You've ruined it! Steve from Colchester is very upset that you interrupted his picture.
Well, Tony Hart never showed the picture that I gave him. I gave him a picture, and he said he would put it on the gallery, and he never did. So now he knows what I feel, Steve from Colchester. Anyway, what I was trying to say for the ladies and gentlemen at home, just to give them a picture of what was happening there, was that Chris was rolling around naked in those pictures of Bruce Boxleitner, which you very kindly sent in.
But anyway, we will go to our first review now.
When I was a little girl, I dreamed of one day being able to announce to people in a podcast that it was time for the first review. Well, I'm excited to say it's time for the first...
Link to our first review. Link to our first review. Link to our first review. Link to our first review.
There's still time for a Coke if you press pause.
We watched it first, so we're going to talk about The Fighter. Chris, what did you make of The Fighter?
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. The good thing about it was the family scenes. I particularly like the family dynamic as well. A very matriarchal family, a very strong woman as sort of figurehead of it, and it was a very female-dominated family as well. In that he had 5 sisters, and they're all actually quite strong personalities as well. The other thing I liked was I liked Christian Bale very much. I think he was absolutely excellent in it. He looked like a drug addict for once, rather than in most Hollywood films that drug addicts look like Hollywood stars, but with their hair ruffled and
I feel at this point that we should point
on.
out that Christian Bale's character is a drug addict in the film. He's not just saying he looks like a drug addict.
Yeah, I'm not
He's
just bad
playing
mouthing
a drug addict.
Bad mouthing Christian Bale. Yeah, he is. He's playing a drug addict, and also the brother of Mark Wahlberg's character. And yeah, he's very skinny. He really does this wonderful mad eye thing as well. He's got all the sort of ticks just right of a habitual crack user. And yeah, I mean, the thing I didn't like about it was it relied on a lot on the staples of the boxing movie genre. I think we all shouted out montage in the cinema every time we saw. We didn't shout it out because that was antisocial, but every time we saw a montage, so there are at least 3.
There's 3 training montages that I counted. I mean, for me, I was really, really nervous. Well, I don't know about nervous, but I was really not looking forward to seeing this movie for the first movie for a while. I haven't, because American sports movies all tend to tell exactly the same story, and I've seen, like a Tin Cup or Rocky or even Dodgeball basically tells the same story, which is why I like the original ending of Dodgeball where they lose. I was basically going into it thinking essentially what this is going to be is another one of those sports movies in which a downtrodden guy achieves glory, and along the way, because of the publicity it's had, there's going to be a lot of monologues about how he's fighting against various different things in his life. What really surprised me about the film is that as Chris said, there is some of that boxing stuff in it, but basically not 90%, say 75% of the movie is actually a family drama and all about his relationships, which made it a lot less boring an experience than I was worried it was going to be. I mean, the dynamic of his family is really, really believable and also sort of hellish in a way. And Christian Bale is unbelievably good in it. Dave, what do you think of it?
I thought it was a really fine film. I agree totally in the fact that basically with boxing films, you've kind of seen it all before. With American sports films, yes, they're all about the underdog coming good. And this is no different. But what differentiates it is just the brilliance of the family relationship drama aspects of it. And just the quality of the acting and directing is superb. And we haven't mentioned him so far, but Mark Wahlberg is just sublime in this very unshowy role, this very normal role. And I'm not usually a fan of Mark Wahlberg, but he just plays this to perfection, and he lets the other members of the cast kind of step up as well. Like he allows Christian Bale to do his amazing performance as Dickie, and he allows Melissa Leo as the kind of the hateful mother, and it's just a beautiful kind of ensemble. It really is, and it's not something you see, I think, enough in Hollywood films. Is that, and he's happy to just sit in the background and just react, and his facial expressions, his facial reactions to what goes on is just beautiful. And I heartily agree that the actresses that play his sisters as these horrific harpies are also all fantastic. And his father is a beautifully kind and supportive character. And his trainer, the cop, is brilliant as well. And these are all actors whose names I don't know. And I feel really bad for not knowing them. But it's just a beautiful supporting cast all round. Melissa Leo is brilliant as the matriarch of this family that's like a cancer to him, that is not good for him.
Yeah, but it's a two-way thing, and that's the clever thing about it, in that, yes, in some way it's holding him back, but in another way, it's actually what makes him. In one of the fights he wins because he remembers an old technique that was taught to him by his brother. If his brother hadn't have been a part of his life, then he wouldn't have won that fight, essentially.
Yeah, but I think it's all about him going beyond that family. You know, he did learn that technique which helped him win that fight because it was taught to him by his brother. But he got to that stage because he kind of cut the cord with the family and kind of moved away and kind of reached out, tried to better himself beyond that family circle, which was so limiting to him, I think.
I think there's a distinction to be drawn, though. I don't think he does eventually cut the cord. When he finally achieves what he's going for, it's when he's achieved a balance between well, basically it's when he is working with his family but on his terms. And I think that was really beautiful. It wasn't that he just pushes everybody away.
Well, no, that's the thing. That's the explicit point, is that kind of the family don't want him to get involved with anyone else because, you know, they say the family are the only people that will look out for him, that these strangers won't. But they do. They do as well. And he kind of increases this association beyond his family circle, which helps him kind of go on to glory. The
crucial character in the whole movie, I mean, I do completely agree that Mark Wahlberg is excellent in that he lets everybody else do the heavy lifting, which I think is brilliant. There's two crucial characters, actually. The mother and Christian Bale, basically, they are pitch-perfect performances, I think.
But I think the third important character is Amy Adams as Mark Wahlberg's girlfriend. Yeah. She has that sort of clarity of an outsider. She can see how the family unit is, but she also wants the best for Mickey as well, the Mark Wahlberg's character. And so she realises that actually that might be outside of that family unit. What she can't see is that if he takes him too far outside that family unit, that's actually doing him damage.
Brilliantly put. Yeah, she presents the opposite extreme.
I mean, there's that fantastic comic scene in the middle. Well, I found it comic where she meets the mother for the first time and the family, and they just automatically, immediately, just assume stuff about her.
Yeah, they close ranks against her,
and basically, even before she said anything, they just close ranks and start insulting her before she's even done anything. And I thought that was very funny. And then, yes, they call her an MTV girl.
In the film, she asks, "What's that even mean?" Amy Adams' character I'm talking about here. What's that even mean? MTV girls, 2 words: skank, wild.
Sounds like a great girlfriend. That scene then gets even better. I mean, I think that was the whole scene is brilliant. That scene gets even better because Christian Bale then shows up and is just unbelievably good.
It's a wonderful kind of breakout role for Christian Bale, who's not known for his lighter kind of roles. In the fact that this character is like the life and soul. He is a genuinely sweet-natured kind of character who has kind of lost his way on crack, but he's just so brilliant and so full of life. And it's all there in that performance. It's just wonderfully kind of comic and absurd, and even more so for being true to the actual person, Dickie Eklund.
I mean, in the narrative sense, it's a very tricky relationship because Mark Wahlberg's character, who is the main character, is very introverted, whereas Christian Bale's character is very extroverted. And that does cause problems.
Well, I would note that Mark Wahlberg has not been nominated for an Oscar for this film.
I think that's a real shame, but I think it's because he's very selfless in allowing other people to get the limelight.
Exactly.
And they do so brilliantly. But I think it reflects very well on him, is that it's a shame that he's not getting the plaudits, because I think the other roles, Melissa Leo's and Christian Bale's, are very showy performances. But the naturalism he brings to it is just... It's really a really warm performance, a really warm-hearted performance.
If I could draw a parallel, it sounds like a fatuous parallel, but it's really not. Have you guys seen The Other Guys, with the movie he made with Will Ferrell?
No, I haven't.
No, he is fantastic in The Other Guys. Whatever you think about The Other Guys, I really enjoyed it. Loads of people didn't. That's a different matter. But what he does in The Other Guys is he is the perfect straight man, which is that he does exactly what he needs to do and lets Will Ferrell do what Will Ferrell does. And I think it's worth knowing that in the context of The Fighter as well, in that he takes it. He's not trying to go out there and be funny and overplay like Ben Affleck does in Kevin Smith's movies when he's finally given a comic role and tries to overdo it. What he does is he just goes, well, this is this comedian, I'm going to play this completely straight, and he does it brilliantly. And it's like in The Fighter, he does have a big monologue in The Fighter, but he doesn't start overacting in a kind of please give me an Oscar way. He just allows the character drama to unfold around him while he is, being this guy. And I think I really like the moral message of the movie, which is that it's not about cutting out this this cancer. It's about being able to make it all work together. I think that's where his success comes from. I think that was the main strong point.
And it's interesting you mention Mark Wahlberg, because it's a fine line between underplaying and being actively wooden. And if you compare his performance in The Fighter to something like The Happening, where he was most certainly very wooden.
And I don't mean to sound cruel, but I think he's got a fairly limited range, but that falls into this film beautifully. It's a beautiful kind of square peg in a square hole role for him.
But I mean, the boxing scenes in The Fighter are very good as well. I mean, I particularly like the way that they are filmed in like 90s film stock
TV,
sort of way.
TV footage,
so they really feel like you're watching them on TV. And I know Hollywood has done it time and time again, presented any sport, but particularly boxing, in a very visceral and affecting and exciting way. And I definitely found myself almost punching with the characters and things like that throughout the fight. So I thought it was that they really brought me in a way, because I don't like boxing as a sport.
No,
I think it's I don't have like a moral objection to it, because I'm prepared for anybody to do whatever they want for their own opinion. But I don't enjoy it to watch.
Yeah.
But in this film, I did.
I think it's because you're invested in the characters, so you do want to see them do well. So
But not only that, also in the film, they managed to work in quite naturally through the dialogue some discussion of the technique of boxing.
Yeah, which
so
is
you know a little
rare,
bit about it before he starts fighting. You know what he's trying to do in the ring. I like the fact you mentioned that it's shot in that 90s style, because it reminds me of a time when HBO just showed rubbish television, sports and rubbish television. That's
rather
all it was.
than being the dramatic behemoth it is now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, in terms of recommending The Fighter, I mean, is it a film that you would wholeheartedly recommend to everyone, or who would enjoy it?
Yes, I would. Basically, I was kind of fairly cautious going into it, because I'm not a fan of boxing or boxing films, but I think for the strength of acting and character stuff and the relationship drama, I heartily recommend it. It's so beautifully well done.
Okay, Chris, what about you?
I'd recommend it, and I'd also say that don't get put off because you think it's going to be a serious Oscar movie. There's a lot of humour in there.
It's very funny.
Yeah. Particularly the family dynamic, which everyone can relate to. And so, yeah, I'd recommend it.
I must say I'm surprised because I would as well. And I think it's mainly, as I said, because what The Fighter is, it's a family drama with some boxing in it. It's not a boxing movie with a family drama hiding in the background. I think that really works in its favour. So we like this movie, so go see it.
Yeah, and just final word on it is just after the film finishes, over the credits you get footage of the real life Mickey and Dickie, and you can see just how brilliantly Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale have recreated those people.
And the thing is, that is usually rubbish as well. If they do that at the end of a movie, that is usually rubbish. But in this, it lets you understand that Christian Bale's almost wacky performance is exactly accurate. And I think that's great point.
In the news this week, the death of a California Highway Patrol officer was today ruled as accidental at a Washington state inquest. The victim, Edward Malice, was irrefutably proved to have been ritually tortured and burned alive, but in the opinion of the presiding judge, Justice Schaffer, probably deserved everything that was coming to him. In lighter news, an exclusive clip has been received of a deleted scene from Jeff Bridges' latest movie, True Grit. Let's take a listen now.
Rooster! Rooster! I have the girl captive, Rooster! Tell me the passwords of a secret hideout, Cogburn, or I swear I will kill her. Do I have your answer, sir? Well? I'm sorry, Rooster, for I did not hear that. Please say it again. Really, Rooster, I cannot understand a word you say. Would you not just speak a little clearer? I cannot understand a word this man says, can you? You are quite correct, Sylvester Stallone. He does need elocution lessons. What do you suggest, King George VI?
Okay, the other movie that we'd like to talk about this week is True Grit, the new... it's a remake of a John Wayne Western, but it's really... They've said that it's based more on the book than the Western. I haven't seen the original, so, Chris, you're probably the best person to ask, having seen the original. Have you seen the original, Dave?
Many years ago.
Many years ago, okay. So, Chris, have you seen it recently? So,
yeah.
So would you say that it's valid for them to say that it's not a remake of the original movie?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I think it's very... I think it's actually quite similar to the John Wayne version, and actually that therein lies its strength, because the John Wayne version is very good, and in many ways it's a good thing that they've remade this, in that they've managed to do it a lot more authentically than, say, the John Wayne version. The John Wayne version was very much in the style of all westerns at that time, which didn't really look much like 19th century America at all.
American westerns.
Yeah.
The Italian westerns were slightly better, I think. Dave, I mean, your memories of True Grit, the original, I mean, is there much that's different?
Well, I think the whole tone of it is shifted wildly, because obviously with the 50s or 60s when the original came out, it has that very Technicolor sheen to it. Everyone's very clean. It's all, it isn't based in any kind of naturalism or realism kind of thing. It's very much a romanticised 50s Western kind of thing. Whereas this one is a lot grittier, basically. It is a lot harder, it feels tougher, and it's beautifully shot. Roger Deakins has just done an amazing job of capturing this kind of almost sepia-tinted, kind of autumnal feel to the film. It's just... Yeah.
It is nice lovely to see. It is nice to see a Western that's cold, isn't it?
Yeah. Set in winter.
Yeah, snow in a Western. Looks lovely.
It's just a gorgeous... I mean, even a shot of a guy who's been hung just looks brilliant.
And the set design was great. Really good. It really looked very authentic. And the costume was so good. The costume in the courtroom scene, that was so excellent.
But I just love the fact that Rooster Cogburn's hat has that hole permanently in it, kind of all the way through. This is not John Wayne. This is someone that's lived a very rough life. And
let's talk about Rooster Cogburn. I mean, what sort of character is he, Dave? What do you reckon?
I love Rooster Cogburn, and part of the appeal, I think, for me, is the fact that Jeff Bridges has him almost incomprehensible a lot of the time. He has got this such a drawl, and it's such a beardy drawl at that a lot of words kind of just get lost in amongst this the rhythm of his speech, although you always get what you need to hear.
See, that was a real weakness for me. I wanted to actually hear more of what Rooster Cogburn said. Sometimes I was having quite a lot of difficulty understanding him, which actually is important in a film. I may be quite old-fashioned here, but I think you should be able to hear every word an actor says
Chris,
in a
you
film.
are so 19th century.
I know. Who'd have thought? Enunciate, dear boy. That was in my head all the time.
You should review for the Daily Mail.
Oh no! I mean, I really like him. I think the main way that he works, the character only works in conjunction with the other characters. Though on his own, there's not much to him.
Yeah,
I think
on his own, he's nothing. But I think you get that impression there is that when he's not accompanied, he is just drunk in a bunk bed all the time, kind of thing. Unless he's working.
And when he's actually doing his job, there's that quite telling scene in the courtroom where they describe a previous bounty they were going after, and yeah, he was completely slapdash and a bit sort of trigger happy.
But when the girl Mattie Ross kind of asks the sheriff of the town who is the best marshal, and he says like the most ruthless is Rooster Cogburn, and you totally get that impression is that this is a man that will kill first and ask questions later. That his ultimate goal is to get his job done, and doesn't matter how he does it, as long as justice is served, kind of thing. So, I just really loved the character for all his qualms, all his foibles, his drunkenness, but also his determination and there is a sense of honour to him, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think the other thing about him is that he's described a lot as being a man without pity, whereas throughout the course of the film, actually the opposite is shown to be true. He's a man who does what he needs to do to get stuff done. He has his own sort of moral code, but he'll sacrifice anything to live by that code. And there's a very telling moment at the end where he basically does something to try and save the girl's life, and it's actually quite an extreme thing, which the girl doesn't want him to do. Doesn't even want him to do it, but he has to do it because that's his code.
I think he's the ultimate pragmatist, isn't he? I mean, essentially at the start he's like, well, I haven't got any reason to do it. She brings in the money, so he goes, all right, I'll go and do it. And then when there is a stage in the movie at which he gives up, but the thing is, it's not him just giving up because he's lazy. It's genuinely because there is nothing more that is to be done in that situation. I think what I liked about him was his pragmatism, is that he is that guy who literally looks at a situation and says, well, this is what's happening, this is what I can do, and then I'm going to go and do it. And the bit where he would give up, he is right. The plot only moves on by complete chance, and I think it's not. And to be fair, everybody gives up at that point. The best part about the movie for me is the interaction between the two leads and Matt Damon's character.
Ultimately, for most of it, it is a road movie with Rooster Cogburn, LaBeef, and Mattie Ross as they kind of camp and travel together.
I mean, if it's okay with you, we'll talk about Mattie last because it is a fantastic performance. But I think the Matt Damon performance is worthy of the same kind of praise that Mark Wahlberg's is, in that he doesn't try and be showy. He does exactly what is necessary for the role, I thought. What did you think of Matt Damon in this movie?
I think the subtleties of Matt Damon's performance are really good.
Again, I think it's a bit like Mark Wahlberg's performance in The Fighter. It's just, he's very human, and therefore kind of gets, I think, missed a bit by these slightly larger, a bit more obvious performances.
But it's the little things he does, like it's on the trailer as well, where he makes that jibe about, I thought you were going to say the sun was in your eyes. Actually, I mean your eye. But the way he says that is brilliant, like someone telling a really bad joke and desperately trying to get a laugh out of it.
The thing is, I think he's a crucial character because he plays the role of the everyman, because everybody else isn't really acting in a way that you can immediately relate to. In that Jeff Bridges is essentially being, very, very pragmatic to a fault. Mattie Ross is being very kind of vengeful, which seems completely out of character for a 14-year-old. But then Matt Damon is a guy doing a job, and you can believe that he's a guy doing a job. But that's what I really liked about him. He was a very human character in what was essentially a movie with kind of not hyperhuman, but sort of extreme characters, if you like.
I particularly liked his hubris as well. The guy was a Texas Ranger, and he was going to let everybody know about it. He fought on the winning side in the Civil War, and he was going to let everybody know about it.
Well, what I loved is just the first image of Matt Damon as LaBeef, where he's sitting on the porch doing the very cowboy thing of putting his feet up on kind of the fence, and then he brings his other foot up, and you got these wonderfully, beautifully jingling spurs, which are very flashy.
And he is kind of the stereotype cowboy, isn't he? For the first few times you see him with the fringes and with the fringes on his jacket and the spurs and the big hat and the drawl. I just thought he was
adios to
adios.
It strikes me as odd that Hailee Steinfeld has only been nominated for Best Supporting Actress when really it's a Best Actress role.
It's definitely a leading role. I don't understand. It seems completely insane that someone who is essentially the focal point of the movie is not nominated for the leading actress.
Yeah, I know. She absolutely drives this film, and Hailee Steinfeld is phenomenal for a 14-year-old.
She's so confident.
Yeah, and she's got an amazing poise. It's just a brilliant performance.
It is. I mean, why do you guys think that she's been put in supporting actress? I mean, is it just that they think she's got a better chance of winning supporting actress?
I think so. I mean, best supporting actress tends to be quite a vacant category, but
she's drawn a short straw then.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think this is a quite bizarre decision, really, because her character drives the film. She's the one that hires. She's the one that causes everything that happens to happen.
She's in virtually every scene as well, or is she in every scene?
But I mean, this happens quite a lot. It generally because the actor isn't famous enough to be in the best actor / actress category. It was the same thing with Tom Wilkinson when he was nominated for In the Bedroom. He wasn't a particularly well-known actor, so they stuck him in supporting actor, despite the fact he was the main character.
I know, I can't really explain it. It just seems bizarre, unless it's just because she's so young. But because it's brilliant. She holds her own against Oscar winner Jeff Bridges, Oscar winner Matt Damon.
Yeah,
who have both kind of been around for years.
They're acting maybe genius is the wrong word, but they are both quality actors. And she is not out of place at all.
I know, it's a bizarre decision. I can't explain it.
Makes no sense at all.
She's helped a lot by the character, which is quite a headstrong, confident character.
She doesn't make that headstrong, confident character really irritating in a way that many other people would.
She's not a feisty heroine.
That's the thing, though. She's 14 years old, but she's an adult. She's a grown-up in this 14-year-old body.
But I think the other good thing is that back then, I'm sure people matured earlier than they do now as well.
Quite possibly, yeah. We are in a permanent state of arrested development as a species. We do seem to be trying to stay children for longer and longer.
But that's a good thing, isn't it?
That is a good thing.
I'd rather we had it this way than we had it in 19th century America.
The world of True Grit is enriched greatly by the quality of its supporting cast. I mean, there's some standouts. Josh Brolin plays the man at the centre of the whole thing, and it's a very small role, but it's a crucial role.
Can I just point out the trailer for True Grit kind of depicts Josh Brolin almost as this the kind of the typical villain turn and kind of grimace up at the camera kind of shot, but the Coen beautifully kind of undercut that by having him then be kind of quite not quite simple, but kind of quite charming in a way.
Well, everything in True Grit doesn't play to unlike in The Fighter, everything in True Grit doesn't really play to the formulaic Western stereotype. Like, they would normally have, the group of evil people. They would show them robbing a stagecoach. They'd show them being evil. And
but actually, the villains are actually quite honourable.
What I loved about that is it showed that they're in this world. They are still prepared to have innocent bystanders, which I thought was really good. And I don't want to say what she's just done, but she's just done something that normally in any other Western the bad guys would be quite annoyed at. But instead they are working on completely opposite. I
also like the fact, and it's something I like about the John Wayne version as well, in that the main villain, the guy they're chasing, isn't even the leader of the gang. He's just a guy who's tagged along by chance a few days before.
In terms of the whole Western genre, I mean, I'm a big fan of Westerns. I don't know if you guys are. I mean, would you say that True Grit is one of the best ones that you've seen, or do you have a particular favourite you want to give a shout out to right now?
I'm not a big fan of Westerns because I kind of I grew up with my father being a big fan of the very cheesy 50s style westerns rather than the quality ones like Once Upon a Time in the West kind of thing. So I saw a lot of John Wayne, and I say saw, I kind of endured them because I find them a bit cheesy and a bit stagey, and a bit too clean cut kind of thing. It's like, I think something that the Coen's True Grit brings is that there's a swiftness and brutality to the gunplay, which kind of, obviously in the old 50s ones, you kind of have long scenes of people just firing off shots left, right and centre, and it's all very theatrical. Whereas now there's that kind of brutality to it. One shot is enough and that person goes down and they look incredibly dead and in a nasty way. Yeah,
because one of the great crimes that cinema does is it underplays the effect of a gunshot wound. Well, I say great crime. I mean, it kind of gives you no idea of exactly what one of those revolvers could do to you. Which, kind of diminishes the threats of guns in the real world. But that's a conversation for a completely different time. Chris, your Western knowledge, is it pretty much the same as Dave's, or have you more of a positive experience of it?
I haven't watched very many Westerns, I would say. The ones I've watched I've greatly enjoyed. Of all the Westerns I've seen which have been made in the last 10, 15 years or so, there haven't been any bad ones. My favourite Western is The Magnificent Seven, but I would give a shout out to For a Few Dollars More, which is my favourite of the Dollars trilogy. I agree with Dave P in that the old style, stagey, cheesy westerns of cowboys dressed in white and villains dressed in black is a bit grating, and I much prefer the style from the late 60s onwards.
This is why I referred to the Italian westerns earlier. I mean, I must have been extremely lucky growing up. That's all I can say. I mean, my favourite westerns are the Sergio Leone ones. I could basically spend a very happy afternoon watching all three of the Dollars movies. I think they're utterly brilliant. And the dubbing obviously is a little bit suspect, and some of the voice acting as well. Some of the VO is rubbish, but they're just such great atmosphere. And Clint Eastwood is such a wonderfully charismatic lead that even when he doesn't say much, it's still brilliant. But the pinnacle of the genre for me is definitely Once Upon a Time in the West, which I just think is just an incredible movie. It's the only thing working against it is its length, but if anybody listening hasn't seen Once Upon a Time in the West and they like westerns at all, even if you put an intermission in the middle, just watch it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about westerns, though, in that the best westerns have a distinctly foreign influence on it. Sergio Leone is a great example. I've said The Magnificent Seven, which is a remake of Seven Samurai by Kurosawa. Yeah, it seems to be that the Western is its strongest when it's inspired by other cultures, much like America itself. So there you go. That was my point.
We are stronger when we work together, much like in The Fighter. We are stronger as a team.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good message for a podcast to give, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and stuff. I don't think True Grit really stands above this version of True Grit, not having seen the original. I don't think it stands above something like Unforgiven or... It's certainly better. I saw Appaloosa, which is the Ed Harris Viggo Mortensen movie. I couldn't remember the name of earlier. It's better than that, but
I think I've seen that as well. Actually,
it's quite a good. I mean, that's a decent movie.
Yeah, it is.
And there've been plenty of what I would term as revisionist westerns recently, which really make it gritty and make the gunplay as realistic as you can on a reasonable kind of certification. I think it's probably better than a lot of those, but I would still, if I was going back to watch a modern western, I just don't think you can beat Unforgiven, really. I just think Unforgiven's a wonderful movie.
See, but the thing is about True Grit, and the way it's different to No Country for Old Men, is that it's actually very humorous, and a lot of the dialogue is humorous, and the interplay between LaBeef and Rooster Cogburn is quite amusing and very funny. Yeah, and generally all the main characters are generally in it for honourable reasons. Whereas in No Country for Old Men, the people are basically motivated by greed. I mean, Josh Brolin takes that money because he wants it.
It won't necessarily appeal to fans of The Big Lebowski in the way that it would appeal to fans of No Country for Old Men or Barton Fink or something. It's more, while there is humour in it, a lot of it is black humour.
Big point of conversation between us when we saw it, the ending. And actually, I mean, maybe a bit of a consensus of opinion, but I thought the last scene was quite unnecessary.
I don't think it does any harm. Kind of confirming that sometimes the heroes don't get the amazing life that maybe they deserve, kind of thing.
It does end on a downbeat note, though. It's more downbeat than the rest of the movie. So I don't think it's something that will really annoy people, but I think it's a strange shift in tone. But it is, again, like the bit at the end of No Country for Old Men, where the main plot, if you like, ends in that hotel room, and then there is a bit afterwards, and there's a big monologue at the end from Tommy Lee Jones. But it felt a bit like that, and I felt it was less kind of necessary to the plot in True Grit than it was in No Country for Old Men. But I didn't think it ruined the movie. I just thought it was a strange kind of out of place bit on the end.
Yeah, the same way as I feel.
Yeah, and it's no different. It's no different to me to having the black cards with the white writing come up. It's kind of not dramatically necessary. I don't think. Again, I don't think it caused as much of a problem, but it did feel like a bit tacked on, and a bit like this bit is in the book, and is it in the original film?
No, it's not.
And I wonder if it's one of those bits where they thought, well, let's differentiate ourselves from the original film by being faithful to the book and telling you what happened next. But I don't think it is necessary to the film.
And it's a melancholy ending, but I don't see there's anything wrong with it. I think it does subvert what the expectations of the material.
Well, why don't we do that with all films then? Why not at the end, Die Hard, do we just have John McClane as an old man
and show them eventually
away?
divorcing?
Because that's a totally different kind of film with a totally different kind of objective in its whole existence.
Well, I mean, you could make the argument about any film that is.
You could say on Her Majesty's Secret Service, maybe they shouldn't have bothered with the whole wedding kind of bit. Maybe if they'd
because that is dramatically necessary. That's the end of the story, which is that it is bigger in the books, but I mean, by doing that, by doing what he does, he causes the death of this woman. And the thing is, I always viewed that as the reason why he's not prepared to have any meaningful relationships in the old Bonds. I know I'm probably overthinking it, but to me, in my head, that always kind of not justified, but gave an explanation as to why Bond is incapable of having a meaningful relationship with a woman, because the only time he ever really has, she immediately dies because of people that he has brought down on himself. And I thought that was really good. But the point is, there is an argument that you could make that point in any movie, that you could have a coda that shows, well, sometimes things aren't all rosy for these characters. But what I mean is, you could take it out of this movie and the movie would still be just as good. I don't think it costs the movie, I don't think it adds to the movie.
I think if you don't have it there, one, you're not being faithful to the actual original material, and two, you just, it's a nothing ending.
We hope you enjoyed those two reviews. Again, two very good films, so we didn't do much mockery, but there'll be plenty of time for that in our next episode. Anyway, thank you again for tuning in. You can contact the show by going to our Facebook page, which is another tiny URL. It's tinyurl.com/3m3page. That's tinyurl.com/3m3page. Or you can email us at 3m3, that's the word 3, the letter M, and the word 3 again, at btinternet.com. Thank you very much in advance. Until next time, my name's Alec.
I can do nothing for you, son.
That was Chris. And I'm Dave P. And if enough of you listen, then I get my shot at the title.
He does indeed. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Madcast. It was recorded on the 12th of February 2011. It was presented by Alec Chapman, Chris Millwood and Dave Puckridge, and guest starred Harrison Ford as Sylvester Stallone. To subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, please go to tinyurl.com/3m3podcast. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you again next time.
I can do nothing for you, son.